Alright, backing up. We're doing another video tutorial, this time on how you should go about setting out the overall structure of a language analysis response. Right, very specific type of response. This is when you're given a persuasive text or any text and you're asked to analyse the use of language within it. So very much what we're doing right now in class. And we've looked at this and you've looked at this and you've made some tips and you've hopefully set some goals if you've been using your time effectively. So this is just a final bit of reinforcement. Now, first step of writing any essay is always planning. Before you start even writing the essay, all right, get a separate sheet of paper, write down what the issue is, what the writer's view is of the issue, so what side they're on or what point they're trying to make. Write down the type of the text, write down the audience, and write down where the text is from. All right, so what newspaper or what TV show. Then reread the text. So you've read it once, read it again. While you're reading it this time, highlight keywords, phrases and sentences that are persuasive or powerful. Right, now I'm going to add a separate thing to that. Alright, if my texter works. If you're capable of this and you can understand the really subtle or technical stuff that's going on, make a note of that too. Now label the highlighted sections with the name of technique being used. Sometimes there's a no label that you know, but the words are still persuasive. Highlight them first, then work out how to describe it. Also remember, there's no official list of techniques. Yeah, that's true to some degree. I mean, obviously you can't just pull something out your backside, but, think about it. So find things that are effective and describe what they are and how they are working to persuade. Decide what the tone is of the piece, all right, and highlight examples that support what the tone is. Group together similar examples. So if you've got very similar persuasive techniques or the same technique being used, group it together and you can put that in one paragraph. Now, writing the introduction. Introduce and briefly explain the issue being discussed in the text and how it arose and why it is being discussed recently. Introduce the text being discussed. Name it by title, author, publication, and date of publication. You can see the example of how you would do this sentence here. Okay, make sure you mention the author's contention and do it in a single sentence if you can. Then state what the tone is. Next sentence. So there it is. Talk about the effect. Talk about whether you think this is an effective text or not. Give us your reasons. You can signpost the 3 body paragraphs by, after you've done these 2 sentences here, with the arrows next to them, you can signpost them by saying, I think this is an effective text because, and then you explain paragraph topic 1, paragraph topic 2, paragraph topic 3. Just in one sentence briefly, like you would in a normal essay response. Now your body paragraphs. You want 3 or more. I recommend 3, all right? Don't get fancy. State what technique you're talking about in the paragraph. Refer to the text either by the writer's surname or the name of the text, and just be consistent. So if you start referring to the text as the beauty pageant's text, don't change your mind and refer it to something else. All right, just keep it the same. Same if you're using the writer's surname, use the writer's surname the same way. You can mix up using the name of the text and the writer's surname, but don't change the way you refer to the writer's surname or the text, if that makes sense. Now, identify and explain the technique or group of techniques. All right, make sure you're providing, so you explain the writer is using rhetorical questions a lot, and then you make sure you use quotations, all right, quotations as examples. Because if you don't provide a specific example from the text as a quotation, you won't get any marks, basically. Clearly explain what technique is being used and explain the impact and purpose of using that technique. All right, now I've done a separate video tutorial on this here about being specific when you talk about the impact and purpose. And then link forward, mention the next technique that you'll discuss. Now, I've come up with a theory. All right, the most basic essay will be looking at one different technique per paragraph, whereas I would expect the best to be looking at groups of techniques. So your first paragraph would be looking at the obvious group, all right, to show that you're not oblivious. Your first body paragraph, you collect what you think is the most obvious the most obvious techniques that are being used. The author's go-to. So that'd be paragraph 1. Paragraph 2 would be what you think is the most powerful, to show that you're able to pick apart the article and say, I think this is the most effective or powerful technique or techniques that are being used. In paragraph 3, you'd be looking at the most technical. To show that you're really quite smart. Right, this is where you get your extra marks and you end up with the A+ as opposed to the A. Okay, so that's showing off your knowledge. Now, there's no reason why you can't do 2 powerful paragraphs or even 3 obvious paragraphs if you're not confident with the technical. Okay? If you're not confident with that, don't do it. Don't do it if you're not sure. Now, conclusion. Restate the issue that's being discussed and the name of the text. Briefly repeat the techniques used by the writer and the purpose, just like you do in a normal conclusion. Make a statement about how effective you think this text is as a persuasive piece. And make a closing statement about the issue in general. Right? If you guys can read this stuff and you can follow those steps, your structure will be perfect. Right, this is how you're going to be marked. And look, if you can't read this, that's fine, because you know where the copy of it is. It's on the blog. Excuse me. Criterion 1 for your marking hasn't changed all year. It's based around how well you analyse the text and how well you know the stuff. In this case, it's persuasive language, right? Criterion 2 is about how coherent your essay is as a flowing piece and how well structured it is. And criterion 3 is about how well you control the conventions of English language. So using the correct meta language, which we've talked about. Meta language means, using the appropriate terms for types of persuasive techniques. And of course, just how well your writing goes. Does it make sense? Is it fluent? Is it not? Is your spelling and stuff good? So, if you go through all of that, you should be able to write a pretty good essay. What I want you to be doing is focusing on the specific structure and improving parts of that you're not confident with, and also looking at where you think you're going to be on this rubric. All right? If you think that right now your writing is generally expressive and fluent, and you want to be expressive and fluent, the difference between that is making sure your vocab is wide and varied, but also that your punctuation and grammar is nearly spot on. However, if you want to go from commenting on the effective persuasive techniques to discussing the effectiveness or power of the techniques, that's a different thing, right? You're not just telling me what the effect is, but you're telling me how effective it is or how powerful. And that's something that you should also work on. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to end it now because I'm blabbering. Have a great week.